Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here on this Saturday. So I'm Kayla. I'm one of the student advisors with WA-SEN, and I'm going to just briefly go through a little WA-SEN overview. So WA-SEN is a nonprofit aimed to mobilize and empower students across the state. We're funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we are we're the student arm of the College Promise Coalition. And so what that means is we bring in the students from all sectors of public higher education in Washington State. So from that list, ICW is independent colleges. Those are the four-year private institutions. College Success Foundation, high school. Council of Presidents, that's the four-year public universities, and then State Board of Community and Technical Colleges, all the CTCs. And Washington Student Association is the other student group that we work with that they focus more on lobbying, and institutions have to be a partner with them to be a part of their programming. So we kind of take everyone and what everyone is going to be focusing on. That's kind of how we set our priorities. And I'll touch on that a little bit more later, but we can go to next slide. So this is a really cool graphic to kind of give you an idea of how our budget for our state works. You'll see the biggest bucket or solar system, right, would be K through 12. And then you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, higher education sits in there. And now, right, like all of the other ones can add into or be connected in some different ways, but higher ed sits kind of in its own little what would that be, plexus? I don't know my terms that well, but yeah, so next slide. Keeping that in mind that we focus on higher ed, and things that contribute to higher ed can be like kind of in the background. But our priorities every year, really, the main focus is financial aid and promoting the Washington College Grant, which is the biggest grant that we have in the state. And then dual credit opportunities, which there is actually a bill that recently got passed and is on the governor's desk to be signed very soon to increase dual credit access. So that's great. And then, like I said, other resources, career navigators, basic needs, things like that. Those are kind of always every year will be on our priorities. Next slide. And so to understand what we do, you kind of have to know a little bit about how our state politics work. So this year is a long session. Odd years are always a long session. Um, and that is when bills can be proposed at the beginning of the year before session starts. That's when bills can start being proposed and then go through different committee chambers, and then voted on. This is kind of just a real brief overview, right? And the thing that's unique with long sessions is one, that's when budgets are for the most part, created. And then in even years, the short session, it's just making edits to what was already created, right? They're not creating a whole new budget. It's just adding or minusing whatever. And with bills that are proposed, so right now there's bills that might not move out of committee chambers because we're almost done with session, right? But they're not completely dead at this point. They do carry on into the next session next year, to continue to be voted on. But during the short session, if it doesn't get passed, doesn't make it to the governor's desk, then it's completely dead. And the following year, you'll have to completely start over the whole process. So yes, a lot of what we do is just getting students in front of legislators, especially during this time, but really it's all year round because we know that it all connects with each other. And we'll probably do either a recap of the session or we'll partner with a different organization that's going to talk about kind of how the session went. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, next slide. Oh yeah, some little stats, just some numbers of how this year has gone so far. Over 50 ledge appointments, 4 different events with legislators present, talking to students, answering their questions. Um, and you'll see kind of out of student participation, that pie chart shows it's very similar to like what you would see like statewide and what students are go at what institutions. So I think we do a really good job of uh, encapsulating what our state makeup is actually like as well. So yeah, and then I think I'm handing it off to Becca.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Becca Tibbetts. I am the other student advisor through Washington Student Engagement Networks. We are going to talk about the year at a glance. We throughout the year we have a lot of events and networking opportunities, and so here soon after the hiring process, we will start our training, which is we'll do the on and off boarding. And then the events that are mandatory for regional coordinators will be Constitution Day, Fall Summit, and Town Hall. The Winter Olympia Days, town halls, and in-district meetups. And so the cool thing about the summit and town hall and winter olympia days is that when we get together on the onboarding process, we will get to talk about what that looks like and how, like, the schedule for it, the days, and what we will want to educate students on, as well as like the storytelling basis. There are other opportunities within WA-SEN that are really great, especially for networking. We'll have conferences all through fall through the springtime, which is really great to meet different students from different college campuses, or you get to network with those from different organizations and partnerships that WA-SEN has been building over the years. We'll have the Gates Foundation convening. It might not look the same as what it has in the past, but that is something that we try to generally go to and attend. And then we'll have different events through sponsors and partnerships, which that can look anything between like webinars, Zoom meetings, yeah, just different collaborations like Kayla was talking about with like the post session recap. Okay, and so if we could have the next slide. So this is our August retreat when everybody came together at the beginning of the year to meet one another, and then we started the planning process. Next slide. We'll have this is what our virtual summit looks like, where all of us came together and held an educational session as well as having legislators come and talk with us. And then we can go to the next one, which is the learning session. This was from the year before, but we all came together to talk about our stories, the barriers that we faced in front of a whole room there were people from like K through 12 systems all the way up to higher ed legislators and others who were listening to all of the stories. Next slide. Community engagement. There is a lot of outreach opportunities that happen within different college campuses, especially if you're a regional coordinator, you're going to outreach to the multiple campuses that are within your region. And so these are just one of the many opportunities, as well as attending conferences. Next slide. This year we collaborated with C4C, WSA, WA-SEN, and then Washington Bus and held a rally. And these are all of the students that attended.
Before we get into the panel, I also want to add that, right, it's based off of student schedule, so whether you guys are able to attend and that kind of thing. But we also went to the Students of Color conference this year. We were at Charting Our Future, which that was more centered towards faculty and community leaders, and then civic leadership conference that all happened in 1 week. So trying to get you guys also out there, and so networking, meeting people, and helping us spread the word about WASEN.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet either as well, and that could open up other opportunities for you in the future too. And so it's really great to work on the like that collaboration, that networking.
Yeah. Okay. So, real quick, I'll do some introductions of everyone. So, we have Richie, who is our Columbia Regional Coordinator and was with WASEN. Oh, you've been with WASEN for 3 years now. Started off as a liaison, got on with Regional Coordinator, took a little bit of a break, and then came back with us. And then we have Jordan, who is our current South Sound Regional Coordinator, who will be graduating this year. So we got him for 1 solid year, and they're off to better things coming here soon. And then Beta, who just joined us, was our North Regional Coordinator for 23-24. Yep. And then Hennessy, who was our 23-24 King Regional Coordinator. And we have Cassandra Cardenas, who is our current King Regional Coordinator and was a liaison for Hennessy um, last year. So very happy to have everyone in this room. And I'm going to go through some of these questions. So to start off, Jordan, when you were first hired with WASEN, it was your first time participating with the program. Can you tell us how you felt getting started and kind of how you feel now? Um, is there any tips that you have for people who are starting for the first time? What's some things that you wish maybe you knew at the beginning of the year?
The beginning of the year as a coordinator was sort of a journey of self-discovery. I think when I came on, and this is one of the things I wish I had known, actually, jumping to the end of the question a little bit. I felt like the Washington College grant and the financial aid was really heavily prioritized in the sort of goals for the year. And as someone who is from a fairly well-off family and not a first-generation college student, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I could talk about and what my own story was so I could share instead of just talking about other people's experiences. So one thing that I ended up realizing over a lot of time was, aside from the dual credit opportunities being a priority as well, which was something that I could really talk about, um, it's super important from my own experience to have a lot of diversity of thought on campuses. And so I think that was one of the things that I was really able to stick to. And when I was going and talking to legislators, I was saying, well, maybe you don't need to do these things for me directly, but it is allowing me to interact with more people on these campuses instead of just being surrounded by people who are the same as me. And that's really been a huge learning experience in classrooms when we have discussions. It's great to have differences because everybody can learn a lot more. So one big tip that I would give for everyone, and this isn't just for regional coordinators, it's for anyone who really wants to be involved with WASEN, is don't just think about how talking to the legislators can directly benefit you, think about how it can also benefit other people because being able to meet more people is great for everyone, and that can really magnify your college experience.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, next question is to Beta. And you had experience working with student government on your campus prior to joining WASEN. Can you tell me about the commonalities and differences given WASEN's approach to strictly advocate? And we haven't talked about that yet. We kind of mentioned it that we are partners with an organization that does focus on lobbying. WASEN is under strict rules to not lobby, strictly advocacy. Um, and so, Beta, can you tell us about your experience explaining that to students? And yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest adjustment was internal, like shifting, because I was in student government for so long, and I also interned at the state board, so there was a lot of lobbying involved. Shifting from like speaking for students, and then instead empowering students to speak for themselves, like through the storytelling workshops that we did, leadership development, and then like collective action, like Olympia days. Um, and I really worked, as when I was a North Region coordinator, I approached students in a way to create long-term systemic change by telling stories. And it wasn't always easy because, sometimes we know that there's a bill and we want to talk to legislators about it, but I think it's just the telling the story because the story is what sticks with the legislator. And when they make that decision later on in the future, they know that they can remember a story. I think that's really what's really important. And that was the shift for me.
Yeah. Okay, Hennessy. Another big point with WASEN. How would you describe the working relationship between regional coordinators and campus liaisons?
I think they're so important. Campus liaisons have a smaller role, but they're so great to have because as a regional coordinator, you're overlooking a handful of colleges and you've been to one. So you only know, in my opinion, I went to the University of Washington, so I know how the University of Washington works, where I could table the type of events that happen annually. So when you have a campus liaison, they know the university, they know their school. So it's really great to be able to like partner with them and what events to attend because as a regional coordinator you can only do so much from the school's website or they only provide so much information, and so to have a student there who's attending the school helped really much. Even Cassandra, when she was my campus liaison, University of Washington is huge. There's so many students, so it was really great to kind of balance the work and trying to get as many because you don't want like certain type of group. You want kids who sci or English or the arts, and because each kid has their story. So to be able to like get around in a diverse group of people as well is really helpful. And creating those strong relationships are really good. So I think they're awesome, and I wish I had more. Because King County, I love King County. It's just a little hard sometimes. And so like cold calling faculty or like people who are in clubs, sometimes is a hit or miss. So when you have that internal person attending the campus, it's so beneficial to have them around.
Nice. So since you kind of already touched on that, I'm gonna skip ahead of some questions real quick. Um, because you mentioned about your region specifically. And so I wanted to give space for other coordinators to talk about their region specifically. Um, so Richie, on that note, can you talk a little bit about what it's like with Columbia because it's very spread out, right? And kind of how do you navigate that? And was there anything else that you've learned about your region that might differ from what you see other peers going through?
I have the largest area to cover because it goes from the entire southern part of Washington State, from Walla Walla all the way to Vancouver, up into central Washington and up into Centralia. And I am not as successful as I'd like in those outer regions. It's been a real challenge for me to break into the areas in Centralia, Vancouver, as well as Central. and I know where I lack in those areas, and it's in really getting my communications um, with those colleges and creating networking opportunities. So that's the challenge. The successes are that my work with Walla Walla and in the Tri-Cities area is very strong. And so that's the role of a coordinator is that you're going to have challenges, you're going to have successes, and to focus on your successes. And in the Tri Cities, I've been able to do some great work, and that's actually our valley areas from Yakima to Walla Walla. So that's been a strong area for me, and I'm proud of that work and the students I'm able to get together in those areas, especially since I do have some help. But yeah, so that is the challenge, is that when you have those um, schools that are farther away, it's creating those networks within those schools.
Thank you. And Beta, do you have any insights that you would like to add specific to the North region?
Yes. For me, because the North region, like I'm based in Everett, whereas it goes all the way to Bellingham, which is about an hour out, and then it's pretty far. So it's a big region. For me, social media was a huge tool that I used all the time, connecting with the liaisons and talking to them, especially during Olympia days. I was able to meet students that went to Western Washington and Bellingham Technical College, I think. And I mean, we're still friends to this day. I think it's really important to have to be open to those connections and then understanding that you're not just limited to where you are. Like personally, you can reach out through social media, through tabling events, and just make the best out of Olympia days and out of the connection that when the whole region gets together.
Okay. Cassandra, can you talk a little bit about, being a student and working for WA-SEN? And was there hurdles that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I think working as a student can kind of get a little difficult for everyone at some point. I think the biggest challenge for me though is probably like scheduling. I don't want to like have to limit myself in like my academics, but I also want to make sure I have time for everything I want to do. So it kind of gets difficult just based on that. But I think like there's so much more benefits that come with having a position like this. I think a lot of the skills I've learned, like teamwork and like communication, have all been pretty transferable to every other aspect of my life, especially like in college. Um, I'm not as afraid to like reach out or like cold email anyone anymore. And I think that skill is one of the reasons is because this position has like helped me do that a lot more. Also like with public speaking, just a lot of different skills that I think I can transfer onto like even when I'm in class, I can ask questions and be like, okay, whatever. Um, but I think it's all been really helpful when it kind of all comes together. Yeah, I think so the biggest challenge is definitely like scheduling, but aside from that, everything's been you guys make it really easy to work with.
Oh, thank you. Jordan, what has been the most rewarding aspect of your year so far?
Since I don't have a car and I'm a senior, I've had my graduation project, so I've been super busy and it was really difficult for me to go around to other campuses, and a lot of other campuses weren't communicating with me very well. So prior to Olympia days, I'd met one other person from my region and I'd seen a bunch of people on like our Zoom events, but I hadn't met anyone. And so Olympia Days was a great opportunity to meet other people from my region and we had some great conversations. We had fun together. We joked about our food, which is like such a normal thing to do. And then we also had a lot of really fulfilling conversations with legislators. It was super fun to go around to as many meetings as possible and just see what they had to say. Um, it was a super great experience, and it really made like all of the lead up to that point feel super worthwhile, and it made me feel like I really belonged as a part of WA-SEN. So that was just super, super fun. And I totally wish I could do it again. And I might go to Olympia Days as an alumni next year if I'm still in Washington, because it was just so fun.
Yes, I hope you do. I hope you come back. Okay, Cassandra, since you are one of the returners that we'll be having, um, from the things that you've learned throughout this year, what is something that you're taking with you into this next year, and how are you going to incorporate into the work?
I think like the biggest thing is probably like reaching out. I think like a common theme has been that like it's sometimes it's a little difficult to do that. Um, but I think I also struggle with that. So I'm trying to get better, reach out to more people. As Jordan was saying, like I really want to meet more people, especially in my region, and kind of tie them into Watson. So I think moving on to the next year, maybe I really want to just be more engaged with my community and try and do more outreach.
Nice. Okay, and Hennessy, how did your time with WASEN prepare you for what you had going on after graduation?
Um, Watson is pretty good. I use it all the time as a flex with this current internship I have. It's a Washington Association of Land Trusts, and they work with all the land trusts across Washington State, and they do more like super policy stuff. So we also had Olympia days for that, but like interviewing for it, they're like, "Have you ever like lobbied or done policy work?" I was like, "I did WASN." um, kind of the same thing. And the aspect of like the public speaking, the leadership roles we take, the networking we do, the cold calling, getting super comfortable on that is honestly a skill. And I think I got super more confident in that and been nonchalant now that I'm working with this land trust of being like talking to random people and being like still nervy, but like more confident. I'm like, I can hold that conversation. And most of these people that work for the land trust are like decades into their work and I'm a year post grad. So, like the confidence you kind of have to have coming into certain conversations, and still informing people. Like when I went to Olympia, it was like informing legislators who have been there, or maybe are brand new, what are land trusts. And I was a year post grad, and having that confidence in those conversations, I think are really key. And I I use it honestly for everything, and also the aspect of it being remote. Now that remote jobs are becoming a thing, I've had a couple of interviews like, are you comfortable being remote and can you be self-motivated? And I'm like, Psh, done that, been that. I can do it again. And I really like the remote life, honestly, in a sense of like it's super flexible. And I've been keeping myself super busy post grad because I'm still adjusting to the life. But yeah, I think the little skills in the year long commitment you make, I think is a really good flex to have on your resume. And it's like, even as a regional coordinator or campus liaison, you still, um, excuse me, that use those skills um, constantly post WASN. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So before we open it up, is there anything that any of you would like to add to what we've been talking about?
Um, Beta mentioned the story, um, sharing our story. And I want to add to that because it is the biggest aspect of what we do as advocates is learn what our story is. Um, what our particular story is what we share with the legislators in Olympia. And that's what they may think about is us individually and our story when they're making decisions to cut a budget or save the budget, our specific stories individually. And so that to me is the most powerful thing that we need to learn is not just what our story is and being able to share it in a condensed 5 minute or less format, but also how to teach other students to share their stories and create them. because that gets a little bit confusing when we talk about that, sharing your story. That gets a little bit lost in translation because we don't mean from childhood. And that's things that I thought, well, what are we talking about exactly? We mean our educational story and how the barriers that we face and the setbacks during our education are important, and that's what we advocate for. We advocate for money or funding for higher education, and we do that in the form of our personal stories and how that impacted us, whether it was access to tutoring, access to financial aid, access to the Washington College Grant, and scholarships, stipend opportunities such as the campus liaison position, which is a stipend opportunity, and so many other things like that is the things that help us and sometimes do not help us if we don't know that they're out there. So sharing our story is the biggest impact and the thing that I wanted to make sure that was mentioned.
Nice.
I just wanted to add something. Because WA-SEN is kind of like, you know, you do this into policy and you do a little bit of legislative work. So like if you're like post grad, for me, I was like, what can I do? Because you know, the environmental world, I graduated with an urban planning degree, um, in environmental focus. So I was like, there's so many opportunities that I can have an environmental impact. And WASing gave me the opportunity to understand, like, you know, I do kind of like this policy work, and or if I didn't like the policy work and the skills, even if I didn't, I can use these skills in a different type of job. So even if you're not like totally like excited for policy and like advocating, the skills that you learn with this job are so interchangeable with any career, any life goals or anything you want to do. So it's not just like you have to have like I'm super passionate about policy to get off with or to apply for. So just like know that, FYI.
Yeah. Anything else? Becca, do you have anything to add?
Uh, yeah, I just overall I agree with what a lot has been said here, especially with using the the skills built within WASEN as well as like networking opportunities. I believe that those are extremely important because you never know who you're going to meet in this role. You meet people from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, anywhere from them. You meet people from ICW, which is the public or the private 4-year colleges, and then you meet people from the public 4-year colleges as well as people from the SBCTC, which is all of the community and technical colleges. And so you get a wide range of individuals you meet, as well as those from conferences. And that alone, you're putting yourself in front of people that know other people, and it opens up so many different opportunities. And you never know what that could do, especially if you are moving into a career after this, because then you have that network.
Yeah. And I would say like when I go to conferences, even so I don't think I said this at the beginning, but I was a regional coordinator for 2 years before I moved into the student advisor role. And people that I have been meeting throughout all of this time, like I run back into them at a conference, like, oh, I didn't know you would be in that role or like still doing this work and stuff like that. And so it is funny in the way that it works out that like you don't know when you're going to see someone again also. That's like, and I think especially in these times, um, knowing people on the inside is so important in landing a career. Um, and so yeah, yep. Networking is huge. And I also wanted to add in kind of explain our role as advisors. So we help support you guys and the regional coordinators to, like we have our events that we do every year, and it's kind of expected, right? Like the summit and town hall, the Olympia days especially will happen every year. But we try and give you guys the the lead. Like you guys get to make it how you want, and we're here to support you. And when your schedule gets busy, we're here to pick up where you left off and kind of help everything keep moving.
So as I understand what the regional coordinator is somebody who would go from campus to campus and talk to the liaison and as like policies are changing or whatnot, they would you could like talk to the students or talk to the liaison and hear their stories so that you can take it back and advocate for what is being said. Is that right?
Go ahead, Richie.
You are close, but it's not because the way you stated it, it's as if there's already liaisons, and there's not always. So as a coordinator, you network those other colleges as well as your own, and primarily it's through email and social media. You can travel to those schools. You get those. You coordinate with Becca and Kayla as far as that goes, depending on who your advisor is, to travel to the other schools because there's budgets for that and whatnot. But the main way that we do it is through email and social media to contact the other schools to look for coordinators. And sometimes you might inherit a coordinator that wants to stay on. So you become a coordinators next year, right? Both of you become coordinators next year. You might have some liaisons that you inherit because they want to stay on already. So now you do have some, and you can work with them at those schools. But you're looking to grow your network of liaisons. You're allowed so many with the budget that you can get. And the advocacy work, the main time that we do that is at Olympia annually. However, we do town halls as well, where legislators will have their own town hall meetings, right? Where they're going to discuss the important issues within their regions, within their areas, legislative regions. And if you get a chance to talk, because not everyone gets a chance to talk at those town halls, then that's another time that you represent WA-SEN and advocate through the question that you might ask them with your WA-SEN hat is how we say it because you're representing us in those moments. So the advocacy work is primarily once a year in Olympia. However, we do represent WA-SEN with all of our events that we host that Kayla showed. The different events that we host are times that we're teaching students about what's going on. So another important aspect is to really understand because that was a hard thing for me, and I think a few of others of us as well, is what's going on? What are we doing, right? We're a nonprofit, okay? And our role as regional coordinator, which I'm assuming that's what you guys want to do, but a campus liaison is just as important, is to network students within our school, because that's the one that's easiest for us to do, right? With setting up a table, talking to students, telling them, hey, join WASA, going to school clubs. I had success that way. And yeah, so that's the important thing about it. Becca's, you're on.
Okay, so a point I want to add on to what Richie is saying too is not only are we trying to network students, we're also trying to mobilize them as well. And so when you stated like bringing their stories, like no, bring the student. Like let's get the student with you as well so they can say their story as well as you talking about your own story. We want to network and mobilize, bring those students together so that everybody has a voice at that table in front of a legislator.
Well, kind of lingering on my mind is also, that there are opportunities. I would say like Olympia Days is the biggest one. And throughout the year, we're trying to promote students to kind of stay with us up to Olympia Days and to actually go to the Capitol with us. Um, but there are the smaller events like the virtual town hall that you get to talk to legislators and um, but there's also a lot of things like we started a series or a new toolkit kind of video series on how to testify or state your position on a bill. And so giving students the resources like that of how you can be proactive and make your voice heard in various different ways. There's always like during session is the busiest time. Like right now, there's a lot of organizations that have an email tool that all you have to do is put in your name, address, and they already have a draft email set for you, and that automatically sends out to your three legislators. Um, so yeah, there is a lot of tools, but then it's also like trying to think of can we creatively get students to mobilize um and then also stick with WA-SEN, right? Is always the goal, but also like how do we get these tools out to you guys to be able to do these things that we think will help us all succeed. If all students will join and be proactive in this kind of initiative, then I think it helps everyone in the long run.
This all sounds really cool. So how would I get involved, and what would be like next steps for me?
So those are the regions that we're hiring, and we do have to make a note that funding is subject to a pending grant. So we Ace Foundation funds us, right? And we were only given 1 year. And so we have to go through the process of seeing whether we're funded again this next year. So just disclaimer, we dealt with the same thing last year. And we're dealing with it again, that we just have to make that known to everyone. But we will be updating constantly as much as we are able, as much as we know, right? So those are the positions, and then that QR code takes you to our website that has the links to apply as well as the job descriptions. Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.